This is video number 9 and hormone number 4 in our series. Quick reminder of how we got here. We are discussing the worry problem, neurological, psychological, spiritual causes and connections to anxiety. We discussed desire, which of course is a psychological trigger, arguably the most fundamental psychological trigger. That was video number 3. We discussed addictions, why we do what we don't want to do. That was video number 4. Of course, that has neurological, psychological, and spiritual implications as well. And then we dove into the forming neurochemicals that interface with anxiety and joy on the other side of this of the spectrum. In other words, the 4 chemicals that cause anxiety if you don't have enough of them, or if they are somehow in imbalance: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. We are on endorphins. Again, 4 of 4. If dopamine is responsible for motivation and reward, and oxytocin is responsible for connection, and serotonin is responsible for contentment, then endorphins are the chemical form of joy. They are the fireworks of life, and they are necessary for a bunch of things, including endurance, laughter, contentment, and release. If you are here listening specifically because you suffer from chronic illness and you have anxiety related to that, also important to know, endorphins are the body's painkillers. But let me not get ahead of myself. 4 questions. What are endorphins? Where do they come from? What inhibits them? And how to fix it. Not fancy medical fixes, practical fixes. Let's tackle the first 2. What are endorphins and where do they come from? Endorphins are small protein-like molecules called neuropeptides. They're made in your brain and pituitary gland, and their name literally means endogenous morphine, endorphin, or the morphine that comes from within. When you are in pain or under stress, or even pushing through a really good workout, your body releases endorphins to dull pain signals and create a sense of calm and euphoria. Now, this is interesting. Calm and euphoria don't usually show up together. In this case, they do. A task that's very difficult to simulate if you're using any of the synthetic alternatives. Again, we'll come back to this, but by way of illustration, have you ever gone to the gym with the bros? If you're a female, this is an experience that you need to try at least once in your life to understand. 10/10, highly recommend, especially if the bros are awesome, right? I am the husband of one sweet wife. I have 3 pretty little daughters. I have 2 sisters-in-law with whom I sometimes work out. I almost never get to work out with my brother. If I did, I'd be bigger because he's like twice as big as I am. But my sisters in particular laugh at me when we all end up at the gym together because they'd be like, I can't work out that. Like, how do you do that? Well, it's just me over there grunting and growling and working up a tremendous pump and then feeling like I could conquer the world. Endorphins. Anyway, these endorphins bind to the same receptors in your nervous system that opioids like morphine and codeine do, but they do it naturally and without addiction or the side effects. And again, they do a better job. You can almost think of endorphins as your internal shock absorbers. They smooth out the bumps and the potholes, like the ups and the downs, the physical ones and the emotional ones, helping you stay steady as a rock even when things are not. Think resilience, only my favorite word in the whole entire world. Now, unlike synthetic opioids, which, as I was just mentioning, are depressants, they only do the one thing. Endorphins give you all the benefits, the calm and the pain relief, but without that systemic depression. They give you a boost instead, hence the calm plus euphoric. Now, they're part of your body's survival mechanism, your survival wiring. They get you over rough patches, right? They help you endure until you reach safety or rest on the other side. But they don't just protect you from pain. They also bring pleasure, hence runner's high, or that deep relaxation that you feel after a hearty laugh, or that warm feeling that comes after you've sung your heart out, right? That's endorphins at work, lowering your pain, raising your mood, and helping you feel safe and yourself again. Which leads us to question number 2, or question number 3. What is it that interferes with healthy endorphin levels? Like all the big 4, endorphins can be thrown off balance by not just how much you produce, but how well your brain and body use them. And many of the disruptors will sound very familiar if you've listened to the other hormones in the series. Number 1, chronic stress and high cortisol. Stress is life's and the body's biggest killjoy, okay? When stress hormones stay elevated, they blunt endorphin response. And the same thing goes for inflammation. Persistent inflammation, whether that be from infections or allergies or mast cell activity or poor gut health, interferes with endorphin receptor sensitivity. So your body may be producing endorphins, but you're just not feeling it. The same thing goes for ultra-processed foods and excess sugar. Interestingly about sugar, sugar jumps on and kind of hijacks it, spins up the dopamine reward system. But again, it's incomplete stimulation, if you will, and it leaves the endorphin pathway underused. So it's kind of like the emotional equivalent of empty calories, just junk food. You get a dopamine spike, but you get no lasting satisfaction. The explosion of pleasure comes from the dopamine, but that long-lasting satisfaction that comes from the endorphins. Then, of course, skipping activities or actions that boost endorphins will lead to lower levels. So sedentary habits, obviously, because endorphins are movement linked. Too much stillness, especially when too much stillness is combined with stress or isolation or junk food eating or whatever, they shrink your baseline output. Same thing with the isolation and low emotional engagement, social laughter, play, music, even affectionate touch, all trigger endorphins as well as oxytocin and some of the other things that we've already mentioned. So when you go too long without those things that boost it, obviously your levels are going to dip. Which leads us to our last question, question number 4. How do you support healthy endorphin levels? Here's the good part. It doesn't require a prescription. Everyday habits work way better than fancy supplements or meds. Here's number 1. Move. Move in a way that feels good. You don't have to be a runner to get a runner's high. Any sustained rhythmic movement, walking, biking, swimming, dancing, even gardening releases endorphins. Extra credit if it's in the sunshine. The key is finding pleasurable exertion. And the sweet spot is where you're breathing heavily, but not hurting yourself. Number 2, laugh. Laugh often. And especially, preferably, with people. Laughter is one of the strongest natural endorphin triggers we know of. Sometimes you need to be less serious. I have never met a sick person who didn't feel better after belly laughing. In fact, I'm not even sure I've ever met a person who regularly belly laughed who was sick. Whoever said laughter is the best medicine should have gotten the Nobel Prize. Maybe they did. I don't know. Next, touch and relaxation. Massage, stretching, warm baths, infrared saunas, these stimulate sensory nerves that are tied to endorphin release. If you live with chronic pain, then gentle touch and warmth are powerful ways to retrain your brain to feel safe again. I'll never forget a line from one of the practitioners that I learned from. She was talking about specific technique in physical therapy, manual therapy, and emphasizing that with this particular technique, it was not about trigger points or pressure points or working out a knot, even if there was a knot, but rather just being present. Literally just having your hand physically and consciously there was all that was required to get the therapeutic benefit. And this is one of the reasons, therapeutic touch. Next, try things. Try things that stretch you out of your comfort zone. Spicy food, believe it or not, cold showers, brief bouts of exercise-induced discomfort. These all spark a release of endorphins. The goal is not, again, to punish yourself. It's to remind your body that you can experience stress and safety in the same moment. Sometimes our bodies need to relearn that lesson. Next, sleep. Endorphins recharge during rest. You've got to protect your circadian rhythm with dark nights, morning sunlight, consistent sleep times, no screens, especially in the evening. And lastly, connect. Endorphins and oxytocin are like dance partners. The more you nurture the one, the more responsive the other becomes. Time with trusted friends, shared laughter, physical closeness. These are like, chicken soup for the soul. Yeah, these are chicken soup for the nervous system. Literally biochemical nutrition for the nervous system. Dopamine helps you chase the life you want. Serotonin helps you rest in who you are. And oxytocin helps you connect with other people. Endorphins help you keep going. When life is hard, when it hurts, or when it halts altogether, they remind you that pain is not the end of the story. In fact, it can just be a stepping stone. So if you've got too much worry, then cheesy as it might seem, move, laugh, connect, create, rest, and let your biology work with you instead of against you. When we come back, we're going to circle back to the psychology of volition. We talked about how not to do what you don't want to do, right? Now it's time we came back to how to become invincible doers, which is, after all, just a fancy way of saying becoming invincible, which is pretty cool. All right, big favor. Follow the channel. Look us up on Instagram or Facebook for more. Those links are in the description. And if you've been mind blown or blessed, pass the blessing on to somebody else. Your little like, believe it or not, puts the truth in front of somebody else who would not otherwise have seen it. Who knows? You might even change a life.